welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is pretty ambitious, but also incredibly important, especially if you're trying to get a handle on this material fast. We're taking a huge syllabus that covers everything from the basics of a computer to the complexities of modern cybersecurity. And we are going to break it all down. We're pulling out every critical concept, every key distinction, every major case study to help you really internalize this stuff.
Exactly. You can't really understand digital security if you don't get the foundations. It's like trying to be a mechanic without knowing what an engine is. We're going to connect the dots today, from the actual hardware, the computer itself, all the way to the software, the protocols, and then inevitably to the vulnerabilities and the attacks.
We have a lot of ground to cover, but it's all laid out logically. We'll start with the history of computing, the components of a modern machine, and how networks function. Then we'll pivot to the Internet's origins, the difference between the Internet and the web, before diving headfirst into cybercrime. We'll talk about the goals of an attack. The CIA triad will catalog all the different types of attacks, look at huge case studies like WannaCry and Equifax, and then malware, defense, firewalls, and critically password management. So let's get into it. Let's build this digital world from the ground up.
Okay, so to really understand where we are, we have to go way back. Almost 200 years, right?
That's right. The whole conceptual blueprint for a modern computer, this idea of input, processing, storage, and output, it was all first laid out by Charles Babbage. He was an English mathematician in the 19th century, and he designed this theoretical machine he called the analytic engine. He had the complete idea, the framework, but the technology to actually build it just didn't exist yet. Right, and so it took a series of major technological shifts to finally make that blueprint a physical reality. These are what we call the 5 generations of computing. Each one is defined by a huge leap in the core technology. So let's start with the first generation. We're talking, roughly 1937 to 1946?
Yep. And the technology that powered these first machines was the vacuum tube. These were basically glass tubes that acted as switches, but they were enormous. They were incredibly unreliable. They generated a ridiculous amount of heat.
A maintenance nightmare.
A complete nightmare. The textbook example is always the ENIAC, the Electronic Numerical Integrator and Computer. J.P. Eckert and J.W. Mauchly invented it, and this thing was a 30-ton monster. It had over 20,000 vacuum tubes and filled a massive room.
And that story about the power grid is true when they switched it on.
It is. When they first fired it up in Philadelphia, it caused measurable power dips in the surrounding neighborhood. It was just pure brute force calculation.
Wow, that really puts the next leap into perspective. The second generation, from 1947 to 1962, we go from this giant, hot, fragile vacuum tube
to the transistor. And this was a genuine revolution. Not just in size, but in reliability and power consumption.
So smaller, cooler, and they didn't break all the time.
Exactly. The transistor is what made computing practical for the first time, and it led to the first commercial computer, the UNIVAC-1, back in 1951. This era also saw the first real steps toward more human-friendly programming with the rise of assembly languages.
And the miniaturization just keeps going. Third generation, 1963 to 1971, brings us the integrated circuit, or the IC, the silicon chip.
Right. And this is where you can start to see what a modern computer looks like. Instead of individual transistors, you could now put many of them onto a single silicon chip. This drove the costs down, sped everything up, and it's when we finally moved away from things like punch cards to keyboards for input.
And the operating systems got more powerful, too.
Hugely. Machines like the IBM 360 and 370 could now handle multitasking, running more than one application at the same time, which is something we completely take for granted today.
Okay, so the fourth generation, which is a long one, 1971 to 2010, this is where computing becomes personal. The defining tech here is the microprocessor.
Specifically, very large-scale integration, or VLSI. This meant you could suddenly fit millions of components onto a single chip.
And that's what gives us the PC.
That's what gives us everything. Personal computers, laptops, PDAs. VLSI is what made mass production possible. Prices plummeted, and you see the explosion of operating systems like Windows, Linux, and Mac. The whole PC revolution is built on this.
Which brings us to today, the fifth generation, from 2010 to the present. And this feels different. It's not just about making things smaller and faster anymore.
Exactly. It's about changing what a computer can do and how it does it. This generation is really defined by artificial intelligence, or AI. We're talking about ultra-large-scale integration, or ULSI, but it's used for robotic processes, for AI. Think about IBM Watson, multi-core processing, all the AI-powered features that are just standard on your phone now.
So that's the journey, from a room-sized machine that dimmed a city block to an AI in your pocket. Now let's look inside one of these modern machines. You said it all revolves around the brain, the central processing unit, the CPU.
It does. The CPU orchestrates everything, and inside the CPU itself, you have four really fundamental components that have to work in perfect harmony.
Okay, let's break those four down. First up is the arithmetic logic unit, the ALU.
The ALU is the calculator. It's the part that actually does the math addition, subtraction, and the logical operations, like comparing if one number is greater than another. It's the raw computational engine.
Then you have memory, and there are two types, right? RAM and ROM.
Correct. Random access memory, or RAM, is the computer's short-term workspace. It's temporary, it's volatile, which means when you turn the power off, everything in RAM is wiped clean. Read-only memory, or ROM, is the opposite. It holds the permanent instructions the computer needs just to start up. That data stays there even when the power is off.
And the fourth piece is the control unit, the CU.
Right. If the ALU is the calculator, the CU is the traffic cop. It directs the flow of all the data and instructions between the ALU, the memory, and all the other parts of the computer. It makes sure everything happens in the right order.
Okay, so that's the core. But to do anything useful, you need to get data in and out of that core. So we need input devices.
Simple enough. Your keyboard, your mouse, a scanner, a touch screen, anything that lets you insert raw data by translating a physical action into a digital signal.
And on the other side of that, you have the output devices, which show you the result of all that processing.
Your monitor, a printer, speakers. The source material also mentions things like a plotter for large graphics, and even computer output microfilm, or COM, which was a way to archive digital data onto physical film for long-term storage.
We also need long-term memory, the secondary storage components.
This is where you save your files permanently. We're talking about hard disk drives, HDDs, flash disk drives, FDDs, like your USB sticks and solid-state drives, optical disk drives, ODDs for CDs and DVDs, even older stuff like magnetic tapes.
But all of this amazing hardware is basically just a smart rock without the final critical layer, software.
Exactly. The hardware can't do anything without instructions. So that includes the operating system, like Windows or Mac OS, the component drivers that let the OS talk to the hardware, and then your application software, your browser, your word processor, and even smaller things like utility software for disk cleaning and firmware, which is low-level software that's embedded directly into a piece of hardware.
So looking forward, what's next? The source material points to four big areas that could totally redefine computing again. First is the continued explosion of artificial intelligence.
For sure. AI's future is all about deeper integration. We're talking augmented and virtual reality, much more advanced voice recognition, image processing, motion detection. It's moving towards a machine that can actually anticipate what you need.
Then we have something that feels like science fiction, quantum computing. This moves beyond the simple ohms and ones of binary.
It does. It's still very early days, but quantum computers use what are called quantum bits, or qubits. And because of a principle called superposition, a bit can be a 0, a 1, or both at the same time.
And the implication of that is, what? Just faster computers?
Not just faster. It's a different kind of computation. When quantum matures, it will solve problems that are literally impossible for today's supercomputers. Things like designing new molecules, breaking modern encryption, massive scale optimization. It's a game changer.
We also have nanotechnology, processing matter at an atomic level.
Yeah, being able to build things down to the 100th of a nanometer. The idea is that when you combine this with quantum physics, you get revolutionary changes in how small and powerful our devices can be.
And finally, parallel processing.
Which we already use a lot in things like cloud computing, but the goal is to get even better at coordinating thousands or millions of processors to work on a single problem at the same time. It's about massive, coordinated power.
Okay, so we've built the machine. Now, how do we get them to talk to each other? Let's get into computer networks, starting with the physical layout, the network topologies.
Topologies are really just the map of how everything is connected. You have a star topology where everything connects to a central hub, a bus where all devices connect to a single main cable, a ring where data passes from one device to the next in a circle, or a mesh where everything is connected to everything else for maximum redundancy. Each one has different costs and benefits.
And the language they speak is governed by protocols, the rules of communication.
Right. You have foundational protocols like Ethernet for the physical connection, then IP, the Internet Protocol, for addressing and routing. And then on top of that, you have application protocols like HTTP for the web, FTP for file transfers, DNS for naming, and SMTP for email. It's a whole stack of rules.
And all this communication basically boils down to two models, right? Client-server and peer-to-peer.
That's it. Client-server is what you use most of the time. Your web browser is a client, and it requests a web page from a web server. Peer-to-peer is where devices connect and share directly with each other, which you see a lot in file sharing applications.
And the physical network itself is built from a bunch of key elements, the hosts, which are the end devices like your computer.
Yep. And then the things that connect them: routers, switches, hubs, firewalls, and of course the physical cables and connectors.
We also classify these networks based on how big they are.
Exactly. You've got your local area network, or LAN, for a single office or home. A metropolitan area network, or MAN, might cover a city or a large campus. And then the big one is the wide area network, or WAN, which connects cities, countries, and continents.
And that brings us to the ultimate WAN, the Internet. I love the origin story here. It's pure Cold War paranoia meets academic brilliance.
It really is. It all kicks off in 1957 when the Soviets launched Sputnik. The U.S. panics and creates ARPA, the Advanced Research Projects Agency, to jumpstart their own tech.
But the key idea came a few years later, in 1962.
It did, from a guy named J.C.R. Licklider. He proposed a decentralized network that could actually survive a nuclear attack. If one part was destroyed, the rest of the network could still communicate. But the real technical breakthrough that made it possible was the theory of packet switching.
This is the critical moment. Instead of one continuous connection like a phone call.
Right, which is very vulnerable. With packet switching, you break your data down into lots of small pieces, or packets. Each packet is individually addressed, and they can all take different routes to get to the destination where they're reassembled.
So it's resilient and efficient.
Massively. And the first physical device to do this was the Interface Message Processor, or IMP, in 1969. It was basically the world's first router. From there, the network grew, became the ARPANET, and then later the NSFNet became the main backbone connecting universities and research centers.
But it was still very academic until the 1990s.
Absolutely. The turning point was when Tim Berners-Lee developed HTTP, the protocol for the World Wide Web, and then in 1993, the internet was opened up for commercial use. That's when everything changed.
And the scale of the impact since then is it's hard to even comprehend.
It's staggering. The material notes that by the end of 2018, there were over 4.1 billion users and nearly 2 billion websites. And the economic numbers are even crazier.
E-commerce sales were projected to cross $4.5 trillion by 2021.
And it's not just retail. It has completely transformed every industry. Telecommunication, moving from landlines to VoIP, education with online learning, business processes with global outsourcing. It's the fundamental operating system of modern society.
So let's look at the elements of this global network. We start with this abstract idea of the internet cloud.
Which is really just a term for the whole massive infrastructure that exists outside of your own local network.
And the first point of contact between your network and that cloud is the edge router.
Right. Think of it like the on-ramp to the highway. It's a powerful device that sits at the edge of your network and manages the traffic going in and out, connecting you to the wider internet.
Deeper inside that cloud, on the highway itself, you have the core routers.
These are the massive interchanges. They form the backbone of the internet, handling incredibly high volumes of traffic with a huge focus on speed and redundancy.
And protecting all of this are firewalls.
The security guards. And you need to know the two main types. A hardware firewall is a physical device that sits at your network gateway. A software firewall is a program that runs on your individual computer. Both of them work by filtering traffic based on a set of security rules.
Okay, now inside a local network, we need to talk about switches versus hubs. This is a key distinction.
It's a really important one for efficiency and security. A hub is a simple, dumb device. When it gets data, it just broadcasts it out to every single device connected to it.
Which is noisy and insecure.
Very. A switch, on the other hand, is intelligent. It knows the specific address, the MANC address of each device connected to it, so it only sends data to the device that's supposed to receive it. It isolates the traffic.
Then you have the specialized machines, the servers, that provide all the services we use.
And the list is endless. Web servers, mail servers, DNS servers for name lookups, game servers. Each one is purpose-built to handle specific types of requests from clients.
And those clients are the hosts. Us.
Yeah.
Our computers, our phones, our smartwatches, anything that accesses those services.
Exactly. But all of this hardware, this physical infrastructure, is useless without the software layer that makes it all work, the addressing system.
The IP address,
Yeah.
the unique number that identifies every device on the network.
Right. And for a long time, the standard has been IPv4. It's a 32-bit number, which gives you about 4.3 billion possible addresses.
Which sounded like a lot at the time, but
We ran out. The internet grew way faster than anyone imagined. That's why we've been transitioning to IPv6, which uses 128 bits.
and that gives us how many?
2 to the power of 128. It's a number so vast it's hard to describe. More addresses than there are atoms on the surface of the Earth. We will not run out of IPv6 addresses.
But humans can't remember all those numbers,
Yeah.
which is why we need the DNS server.
The domain name system. It's the internet's phone book. It's what translates the human-friendly name you type into your browser, like a website URL, into the numerical IP address that the routers actually need to find the server. It happens instantly, behind the scenes.
And managing all the traffic is the TCP/IP protocol suite. Let's start with TCP.
Transmission Control Protocol. TCP is all about reliability. It's connection-oriented. It establishes a connection, and it guarantees 3 things: error checking, flow control, and guaranteed delivery. If a packet gets lost, TCP will notice and resend it.
So you use it for things where accuracy is critical, like downloading a file or logging into your bank.
Precisely. Now contrast that with its sibling, UDP, the User Datagram Protocol.
And UDP is the opposite.
It's connectionless. It's all about speed. It just fires the packets out and hopes for the best. There's no error checking or guaranteed delivery.
So why would you ever use it?
For real-time applications where a little bit of data loss is better than a delay, think live video streaming, online gaming, voice-over IP calls. You'd rather have a tiny glitch in the video than have it pause to re-download a missed frame.
Okay, this is a perfect time to clear up one last foundational point. The difference between the World Wide Web and the Internet. People use them interchangeably, but they're not the same thing.
They are not. It's a crucial distinction. The internet is the physical infrastructure. It's the global network of computers, the routers, the cables, the protocols like TCP/IP. It's the hardware. The World Wide Web, or the web, is a service that runs on the internet. It's the massive collection of documents and resources that are linked together using hyperlinks and accessed via one specific protocol, HTTP.
So the web is one application, albeit a massive one, that uses the internet to function.
That's the perfect way to put it.
Okay, we have now built the entire digital world, from the CPU to the global protocols. So now, let's talk about how to break it.
Well, that's where cybersecurity comes in. The definition is pretty simple. It's the protection of all that software, hardware, and data that we just described. But the scope is huge. It covers everything from the physical security of a data center to encryption to privacy to regulating who's allowed to access what. It's a constant, ongoing effort.
And the threat is not abstract. The numbers in the source material are mind-boggling. Global damages from cybercrime were expected to hit $6 trillion by 2021.
That's up from $3 trillion just 6 years earlier. It's doubling. And it's not just the big, flashy heists you read about. The average cost of a single major data breach in 2018 was nearly $4 million.
And some researchers estimate that the average computer connected to the internet is hit with something like 2,244 malicious attacks every single day.
Every day. That's why you can't just buy cybersecurity once. It has to be a continuous process of planning, monitoring, and adapting. You're always under attack.
So when an attacker launches one of these attacks, what is their goal? It all comes down to a fundamental security model called the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability.
Let's start with C, confidentiality breach. This is the one people are most familiar with. It's the unauthorized disclosure of information.
Stealing data.
Stealing data. Customer credit card numbers, trade secrets, sensitive personal information. When Equifax lost all that data, that was a massive confidentiality breach. The result is financial loss, but also a huge loss of trust.
Okay, next is A, availability breach. This is about stopping things from working.
Exactly. It's an interruption of service. It could be accidental, like a server failing, but when it's intentional, it's usually a denial of service attack. The goal is to make a website or a service completely inaccessible to its legitimate users.
And finally, I, integrity breach. This one feels more subtle, maybe even more dangerous.
It often is. Integrity is about the trustworthiness and accuracy of the data. An integrity breach is when an attacker doesn't steal or delete data, but they change it. They corrupt it.
So the system is still up, the data is still there, but you can no longer trust it.
Exactly. The classic example is the Stuxnet worm in 2010. It secretly manipulated the data from Iran's nuclear centrifuges, making them spin out of control while telling the operators that everything was normal. That's an integrity attack. Chilling.
Okay, so with those objectives in mind, let's go through the catalog of weapons. The most basic attack against availability is the denial of service, or DOS attack.
Right. It's a brute force method. You just flood a target server with so much traffic or so many requests that it gets overwhelmed and can't respond to legitimate users anymore. It grinds to a halt.
But a DOS attack comes from a single source, which is relatively easy to block. So attackers evolved.
They did. To the much more dangerous distributed denial of service, or DDoS, attack. Instead of one attacker, they use a network of thousands of infected computers, a botnet of zombies, to launch a coordinated flood of traffic from all over the world at the same time. It's exponentially harder to defend against.
Next up, the classic deception. The man-in-the-middle attack, or MITM.
This is an interception attack. The attacker places themselves invisibly between two parties. For example, they might trick you into connecting to a fake Wi-Fi hotspot that looks legitimate. Now they're in the middle, and they can read, steal, or even alter all of your communications without you or the person you're talking to ever knowing.
A more modern, financially motivated attack is cryptojacking.
This is all about stealing processing power. Mining for cryptocurrencies takes a huge amount of computer resources, so cryptojackers secretly install malware on your computer that uses your CPU to do that mining work for them.
So they get the cryptocurrency, and you just get a slow computer and high electricity bill.
Pretty much.
What about attacking the applications themselves? The source mentions SQL injection as a major one.
It's one of the biggest threats to web applications. It happens when a website doesn't properly check the data that users type into a form, like a search box or a login page. An attacker can inject malicious database commands, or SQL code, into that form, tricking the server into running those commands and potentially dumping the entire user database.
Then there's spamming, which we all know, but its real purpose is malicious, isn't it?
It is. While it's annoying, spam is primarily a delivery mechanism for much worse things. Phishing links, viruses, Trojans. It's the first step in a lot of bigger attacks.
And when attacks have a political motive, we get into cyber terrorism.
This is when the target is critical infrastructure, power grids, hospitals, defense systems, and the goal is to cause widespread disruption, damage, or fear to achieve a political or ideological objective.
The list goes on. Digital property misappropriation, basically piracy.
Yep. Illegally using software, ebooks, images without permission, a massive industry in itself.
And one of the scariest concepts is zero-day exploitation.
0 day means the vulnerability being exploited is brand new and completely unknown to the software vendor. There's no patch, no fix available.
So there's literally 0 days of protection.
Exactly. It's the holy grail for hackers. That's why big tech companies have bug bounty programs paying researchers millions to find these flaws before the criminals do.
Okay, and then the big one, phishing. Social manipulation.
Posing as a trustworthy source, your bank, a government agency, a colleague, to trick you into giving up sensitive information. It comes in 3 main flavors. Phishing is via email, vishing is voice phishing over the phone, and smishing is via SMS text messages. The goal is always the same: steal your credentials or money.
And we also see things like digital vandalism, which is just defacing or destroying data to harm our reputation, and the really personal, damaging stuff like cyber stalking and cyberbullying.
Right, using digital tools for systematic harassment, and finally, cyber frauds and forgery, using high-tech printers and software to create counterfeit documents or currency.
Okay, that is a terrifying arsenal. Now let's see how these weapons are used in the real world with some of these high-impact case studies. Let's start with a big one, Equifax in 2017.
A truly catastrophic breach. Equifax is one of the largest credit reporting agencies. The attackers got in and stole the personal data of over 820 million consumers. And we're not just talking usernames. We're talking social security numbers, birth dates, addresses, driver's license numbers.
The absolute keys to the kingdom for identity theft.
Everything. The estimated financial loss was over $4 billion. The company's stock plummeted. It's considered one of the worst digital crimes in history because of the sensitivity and permanence of the data that was lost.
Next, a more technical one, the VPN filter cyber attack.
This was a very sophisticated piece of malware that targeted routers, the kind of routers people have in their homes and small businesses. It was a multi-stage attack. Stage 1 was a worm that could survive a reboot. Stage 2 was the main payload. And Stage 3 was a collection of malicious modules that could do things like spy on your traffic, steal data, and even brick the router, rendering it useless.
2017 was a bad year. It also gave us the WannaCry ransom attack.
It was. WannaCry was a crypto worm that spread like wildfire, encrypting hundreds of thousands of Windows computers around the world and demanding a ransom in Bitcoin. The total damage was estimated at around $4 billion.
But the really important part of this story is how it spread.
That's the key lesson. It didn't rely on users clicking a bad link. It used an incredibly powerful hacking tool called Eternal Blue. Eternal Blue was an exploit developed by the U.S. National Security Agency, the NSA. It was stolen and leaked by a group called the Shadow Brokers, and once it was out in the wild, criminals weaponized it to create WannaCry.
So a state-level cyber weapon ended up in the hands of common criminals.
And it caused global chaos. It was a huge wake-up call.
And it happened again just a month later with the Petya cyber attack.
Also known as NotPetya. It also used the Eternal Blue exploit to spread, and it hit critical infrastructure hard, especially in Ukraine. But the second version, NotPetya, was even more sinister. It looked like ransomware, but it was actually a wiper. The encryption was irreversible. Its only goal was pure destruction. The total damage was estimated at $10 billion.
Shifting to geopolitics, we have to touch on the U.S. election manipulation in 2016.
Right, and here we just report on what the sources detail. There were allegations and incidents of Russian state-sponsored hackers exploiting election systems, hacking into the DNC servers, and hacking the personal email of John Podesta. The goal wasn't direct financial gain, but to meddle, to sow discord, and to influence voters by leaking stolen information.
And this wasn't the first time. The source mentions a similar test run in Ukraine in 2014.
Correct. Another example of state-level espionage was the Shadow Network attack in 2010. This was an attack originating from China that targeted the Indian government and the office of the Dalai Lama. They stole incredibly sensitive documents about Indian policies, security plans, even missile systems, by cleverly hiding their command and control servers in plain sight on services like Twitter and Yahoo Mail.
And for pure technical scale, there's the GitHub DDoS attack in 2018.
At the time, it was the largest DDoS attack ever recorded. It peaked at 1.35 terabits per second of traffic.
How is that even possible?
Through a clever amplification technique. They abused misconfigured servers called memcached servers. They could send a tiny request to these servers and get a response that was over 50,000 times bigger, which they aimed at GitHub. The amplification was massive.
And finally, a reminder that it's not just financial or government data. The Under Armour hack in 2018.
Right. They compromised the MyFitnessPal app, stealing the usernames, emails, and passwords of 150 million users. It shows that any large collection of user data is a valuable target.
Okay, so let's look closer at the malware itself. We need to be really clear on the definitions here. Let's start with the classic. Viruses.
The key thing to remember about a virus is that it requires user activation. It attaches itself to a legitimate file, an executable. And it can't do anything until you run that file. Once you do, it activates, replicates itself to other files, and delivers its payload.
Next, the great pretender, the Trojan horse.
A Trojan disguises itself as something useful or harmless. A game, a utility. You are tricked into installing it. But once it's inside, it opens up a backdoor for an attacker to steal your information or take control of your computer.
And the key difference from a virus is?
It does not replicate itself. It relies completely on social engineering to get installed in the first place.
Then we have worms.
Worms are the most aggressive. They are self-replicating and self-propagating. Unlike a virus, they don't need a user to do anything. They actively exploit vulnerabilities in a network to spread from machine to machine on their own. WannaCry was a worm. They consume huge amounts of bandwidth and can bring entire networks down. The first major one was the Morris worm back in 1988, which infected about 10% of the entire internet at the time.
Okay, now for the really sneaky ones. The rootkit.
A rootkit is nasty. Its goal is to get root access, the highest level of administrative control over an operating system, and then to hide itself completely. They're incredibly difficult to detect and remove because they can manipulate the OS at a very low level. They're designed for long-term, stealthy control.
Then there's spyware.
Just like it sounds. It's software that secretly monitors your activity, what websites you visit, what you type, your interests. It can be used for aggressive targeted advertising, but in its more malicious forms, it can be a keylogger that captures all your usernames and passwords.
And lastly, the annoying but less destructive category, adware.
Right, forces you to see pop-up ads. It's mainly about generating ad
And
revenue.
shareware.
This is a scam. It's software that displays fake warnings like, your computer is infected with 37 viruses, buy our product to clean it. It preys on fear to get you to buy useless or malicious software.
And finally, the browser hijacker.
That's malware that changes your browser settings without your permission, your homepage, your default search engine, to redirect you to websites that the attacker wants you to visit, again, usually for ad revenue.
Okay, we've seen the threats. Let's talk about defense. How do we secure our machines?
Given everything we've talked about, this is absolutely critical. And the first line of defense always is the firewall.
The bouncer at the door. It monitors all the traffic coming in and out of your network and blocks anything suspicious based on a set of security rules.
Exactly. And you have both hardware firewalls for the network and software firewalls on your computer.
Next, you absolutely need good antivirus software.
This is your general-purpose malware detector. It scans for, quarantines, and removes viruses, trojans, worms, and the like. It's essential.
And specialized tools as well, like anti-spyware and anti-spam.
Yep. They focus specifically on those threats. Spam is still a huge vector for malware, so filtering it out is important.
But there's one thing that isn't software that might be the most important rule of all.
Let me guess. Security updates.
Security updates.
Absolutely. When a company like Microsoft or Apple releases a security patch, hackers immediately reverse engineer it to figure out what the original flaw was. They then scan the internet for unpatched systems, which become incredibly easy targets. If you don't install your updates promptly, your machine is a sitting duck.
We also need to practice safe day-to-day habits. Secure browsing settings.
Right. Turn up the security and privacy levels in your browser. Make sure you're using secure HTTPS connections. And a really big tip, avoid using an administrator account for your daily activities.
Why is that so important?
If you get compromised while using a standard user account, the malware is limited in what it can do. If you're logged in as an administrator, it has the keys to the entire system.
And finally, be aware of social engineering.
Just be skeptical of unsolicited emails, of urgent phone calls demanding information. These attacks prey on human psychology, trust, fear, and urgency. Slow down and think before you click or give out information.
That brings us to the final critical piece of personal defense, password management, the digital lifeline.
It truly is. Passwords are the front door, and studies show that most people are terrible at creating and managing them. Over 70% of users don't follow basic guidelines.
And the bad guys have lots of ways to crack them. Brute force attacks, where a computer just tries every possible combination.
Right. Modern computers can try billions of combinations per second. They also just guess, using common words, names, or simple patterns.
So let's define a good password versus a bad password.
A bad password is short, uses a dictionary word, is repetitive, or just adds a 1 to the end of a word. Password 123. A good password is long, at least 10 to 15 characters. It's a complex, random-looking mix of uppercase letters, lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols. And you should never reuse it.
The trick is creating something that's complex but that you can still remember.
One good method is to use a passphrase. Think of a sentence that's easy for you to remember, like, my dog Fido was born in 2018, and then turn that into a password using the first letters and some substitutions. So it becomes MDFWB by 2018. Complex, but memorable to you.
We're also moving beyond just passwords with biometric.
Using what you are, your fingerprint, your face, your retina. It's highly secure because it's unique to you, though it does raise some privacy questions.
But the gold standard today is adding more layers. Two-factor authentication or 2FA.
This is so important. It adds a second layer of security. It combines something you know your password with something you have, which is usually your phone. After you enter your password, the site sends a temporary one-time code to your phone that you also have to enter. So even if a hacker steals your password, they can't get in without also having your physical phone.
And the broader concept here is multi-factor authentication, or MFA.
Right. MFA requires at least 2 credentials from 3 different categories.
The first category is what you know.
Your password, your peon, something in your head.
The second is what you are.
Your biometrics, your fingerprint, your face.
And the third is what you have.
A physical object. Your phone receiving a one-time password, OTP, or a special security key fob.
Now, the problem with having a unique, complex password for every single website is, how on earth do you remember them all?
You don't. You can't. That's why you need to use a password manager. These are applications like Dashlane, LastPass, or KeePass. They do two things. First, they generate incredibly strong random passwords for you. Second, they store all of those passwords for you in a highly encrypted vault. You only have to remember one strong maskable password to unlock the vault. They completely solve the problem of password reuse and weakness.
So we've come full circle, from the vacuum tubes of the EIACI to the encrypted vaults of a password manager.
We have. And the through line is clear. The incredible complexity of our digital infrastructure, from the hardware up to the global protocols, creates all these opportunities for attack. But the vast majority of successful attacks, even the massive ones, ultimately come down to exploiting a simple human failure. An unpatched system, a weak or reused password, a moment of carelessness.
Which really brings this whole deep dive into focus for you, the listener. The game changed when the state-level cyber weapons like Eternal Blue got out into the world, because now that high-end tech is being aimed squarely at everyday user vulnerability.
Exactly. So here's the final thought I want to leave you with. We've seen that cybercriminals prey on human nature, our laziness, our trust, our failure to do the simple things. If that's true, if the primary attack vector is user carelessness, then what single action, if everyone did it tomorrow, would instantly neutralize 90% of the threats we've discussed? Think about those three factors of authentication. It's about combining what you know with what you have. Because if you do that, a stolen password becomes completely worthless. And that is the difference between just knowing this material and truly being secure.
Go back over this structure, connect these ideas, and you'll be ready. Mastering these concepts is the key to protecting yourself in this digital world.